if they've given you government furnished property, for example, and they think you're not going to be here tomorrow, that's their financial interest that they're protecting. How do they monitor? They look at whether they should, if there's anything that they have to start monitoring because there are circumstances that have occurred in your world that could impact them. They look at how they can protect their own interest. If a lien is placed, so if you go into Chapter 11, there could be a lien placed against your inventory. How's the government going to get their stuff? That would be another thing to trigger it. How can they protect if you're facing bankruptcy? And are you furnishing information to interested parties upon request? So they go into attack mode to make sure they protect all their stuff. COs typically don't have all this financial knowledge themselves. They're bringing in other parts of the government to be able to help them with that, financial advisors, to see whether it warrants doing this financial review. They also look at your statutory or regulatory compliance. So first they figure out which clauses specifically in the contract fall under the statutory requirement. So do you have a Davis-Bacon requirement for certain labor rates? Do you have Service Contracting Act for certain labor rates? And if you do, they want to make sure that you're complying with the labor laws. Things like privacy and drug-free workplace issues. So they should walk into your facility and see a drug-free sign that says we don't allow drugs in this place of business. Any kind of hazardous or non-domestic recovered materials that you're using appropriate OSHA standards to deal with those correctly, and then any kind of insurance or tax issues resolving around or involving intellectual property. So they really are looking at you just to make sure that you don't have any issues in these areas. And then they monitor compliance with your subcontracting. So you remember you had to come up with that subcontracting plan if you're a large business to say X amount of business is going to go to women-owned, X amount of business is going to go to HubZone and other small disadvantaged business entities. They're checking to make sure you're compliant with that. They can also come up with incentives for if you exceed your goals. So maybe the government's really struggling with hiring Native American companies, and you can bring in several more Native American companies, and therefore you can help the government meet that objective. They can give you an incentive for that. Other techniques used for monitoring, they conduct meetings, on-site visits. We talked about personal observations, phone calls, contractor reports, requests, contracting officers from other agencies to discuss your performance, and then any tracking and management systems that you have. So like, for example, when I ran a VA contract, I let the customer into my EDMS system so they could see exactly what I was saying and make decisions accordingly. Okay, so sometimes the government will conduct an on-site visit before contract award, and sometimes they'll do it after contract award. But basically what they're trying to get a sense of is, are you who you say you are? Because again, companies can write anything they want, and so this is their chance to come in and sort of oddball what you're really doing. And so typically it's a sheet with a bunch of boxes checked off as to what things they want to see when they come in. So the rules are that they have to give you the names, official positions, security information for all visitors. So they're going to tell you who they are and what security clearances they hold. And they want to know what security clearances you hold in the event that any secure information is being discussed. The date and duration of the visit, the name and address of the contractor facility you're going to contact, and then the purpose of your visit. If you need the CAO representative, we ask them for that. And then the specific pieces of data. So they should tell you ahead of time what specific pieces of data they want to see when they get to your location. My suggestion to you is anytime you hear the word audit, go find all the pieces of information before they walk in the door. Because if they come in and they get that warm fuzzy that you're very organized and we're just checking the boxes and here's everything you asked for and they're reviewing it, the audit's going to go much better for you. It really will. If they walk in and you've got this blank desk and they're like, oh, well, I asked for these 30 things, where are they? Oh, well, what's the first one on the list? Okay, let me go find that from Joe down here. now they'll start asking more questions, and then they really won't believe that you have your act together, so just get everything organized ahead of time. They can also call you to check on progress, identifying performance problems, and again, anytime you're talking about it, you need to be truthful. So, as you mentioned, telephone conversations are documented with synopses of the conversations, who's involved, any action items, any contract reports or daily logs, let government know of any potential changes or issues with performance. And then you're going to provide these reports to the government to make sure that you identify potential or actual delays of performance. So if there's a problem that you have on your side of the house, go to the government and say, this is the problem we have, and this is the remediation and how fast we think you can get it fixed. They're going to be much more appreciative if you're forthcoming with them. Did you find contractors told you ahead of time, or told you when they were having issues? Or
It was usually after a red flag or two came up and we started asking questions, and then it was like, well, yeah, things are kind of wrong. A lot of times we find out before they let us know. And you're absolutely right. You come to us, we're going to work with you. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Progress reports, these are things that are stipulated by your contract, you know, which actual deliveries or performance milestones have been met, what's coming, what's upcoming, what are any kind of factors causing delays, like are you getting all the information you need from the government, are they reviewing things in a timely manner, what's the status of the contract work in general, any difficulties or delay factors, what's the reason behind them, what actions are being taken. So you can see they take this whole monitoring thing very seriously. These are other examples of reports: planning, purchasing, rearrange your factory, if that's going to impact what they're doing, testing, shipping, R&D components. If you have an R&D piece, which I don't suspect you will, you have those things to be considering. You want to make sure that any requests that come in from contract, that when you submit any requests to the government, for things that you need to know, the government has to determine whether or not you're complying with the contractual term, allowing for a contractual request, or if you're notifying the government of proposed changes to the contract. So, you know, if you find that you absolutely can't do something, maybe the machine doesn't work that way, or you have to go and report that to the government, and you have to figure out what the workaround is going to be. They could terminate you at that point because you're not compliant. So these are all ways that they monitor, and all ways that they document, and things that you put in trip reports. You know, what did you go off and see, kind of contact. So just keeping that file on everything that you're doing. And then finally, typically these things are done as memorandums to the file, where they just keep an ongoing running list of everything they're doing. Why do they have to document so much? Because what typically happens is that if there ends up being a dispute where you say to the government, we don't think we should have had to do that, the government's like, oh yeah, you did have to do that, there's going to be a dispute, right? You're going to not want to have to do it, and they're going to force you to do it. And so in cases like that, when you get into any sort of dispute situation, these notes that the Corps has taken throughout this entire process really become valuable to be able to show a pattern of deficiency or a pattern of missing milestones or things like that. So I don't want to make a paradigm that you're always being watched, but the fact is that they are sort of keeping tabs on you to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then any kind of correspondence between the government and the contractor could provide written record of status, contract status, anything about contract completion, helps ensure both parties have an understanding. So you'll find that anytime, if things are going along smoothly and you haven't heard from the government, chances are everything's good. If you start to hear from the government in terms of a cure notice or a stop work or anything like that, pay attention to it, because you have a very short period of time that you have to respond to that. And you got to keep that. You've got to keep that communication going to resolve the issue. It can't be one of those things you sort of put on the back burner. Correspondence can be prepared for any one of these, notifying others of the problem, providing routine status updates. Because keep in mind, government officials aren't just working with you, they're having to report up to the program team, are we on track to meet the mission? So when you lie to them or you you make it seem like everything's going along fine and it's not, they're relying on your information, and now they're turning around and looking bad to their manager because they've been telling them that you're compliant and everything's fine and it's not really. Sometimes they have to prepare a report where the government has reached back to other parts of their agency to help them with different issues. So depending on what the nature is of the problem, they could reach back for technical analysis to find out, do we really need to do a contract modification? Should the contractor be paid for this work? Really, was it outside of the scope? Because we make mistakes on our side, they make mistakes on their side, so they'll say to you, well, yeah, this should have been a requirement, it wasn't, and we do think you should get extra money for doing this, because that wasn't, we made a mistake. Here's the format for technical analysis. When is the analysis due? What's the contract number? So this is how they send it off to their technical people to get response and bring it back into the discussion. Okay. Good. All right, well, let's take a 10-minute break and let me upload some files from my computer.